Hi, welcome back to the Hot Air Show. My name's Lloyd, and we have Mr. Beelis again. It's getting to be a regular thing, isn't it, Tony?
Yeah,
actually,
people will start to talk.
People will start to talk, actually. Yes, and we've got some really interesting stuff for you today. I think we're going to split the show off into maybe two parts.
27 parts, you say?
27 parts.
Right. Okay.
We're going to split it off into two parts. We're going to talk about the British Shooting Show. I would imagine that quite a few people who've been watching this have already been, but we'll just have a little bit of a chat. I didn't go, to be honest with you, so I'm really interested. Tony obviously was there on a stand, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a bit. So I'm quite interested to hear from Tony's perspective what he thought of the show this year. And the second part... well, shall we just leave that a bit of a... We'll leave that as a bit... Well, it won't be a surprise for a lot of people, but we've got something really interesting to show you. Quite a few interesting things to show you. And we'll have a nice chit-chat about all that. But anyway, let's talk about the
Great British...
The Great British... Well, it is the Great British...
Yeah, they kind of stole the great thing from the Bake Off, haven't they? And I've noticed it in a couple of the adverts that the Great British... I thought,
it's a serious form of flattery, why not? Exactly. I think it works really well. And to be honest with you, I've noticed this year that quite a lot of people were actually getting quite excited about going. More so than I've seen for a long time.
Quite rightly so, because... we've been bouncing off the floor in the cow sheds at Stoneleigh for a decade. I found myself eating a sort of stale sandwich at £5.50 at Stoneleigh last year, thinking, is this it? Is this where we've got to? Looking at the rusty roof and the asbestos and the light fittings hanging down, and the bill, which was world class. The only thing you can say about the cost of Stoneleigh was they knew how to charge, but the actual venue was just dire. And I think originally I was a lone voice in the wilderness saying, this place is crap, and most people didn't like me for saying it. But as we went on through the years, more voices piped up. And I think that the organisers knew that if they didn't move it up, it was going to go down. And John Allison, who's quite an outspoken character as well, and I've been out speaking to him for quite a couple of years on this. He realised it himself, and he went off and he got around, and he managed to sign up the National Exhibition Centre, the NEC, the main event centre for the UK.
Yeah, very impressive.
Very impressive venue.
Yeah.
It takes some guts to take a smallish show, which is doing very well, and take it to a world-class event like that. Yeah. And he did it.
Excellent.
He pulled it off, and everybody went and enjoyed themselves.
Good. So, how do you want to do this? You're going to tell me about obviously you were sort of stuck on a stand, weren't you, for quite a while?
I was on a stand.
Manage to get around?
Well, I escaped every now and then, had a look around, and obviously I'm getting people coming. Have you seen? So I'd wander over. To be fair, it was 3 halls. I think it was 7, 8, 9 or something halls. So they'd opened up 3 halls. So it made it look a lot smaller than perhaps it was, because when you take away, where Stoneleigh was all nooks and crannies, and you went downstairs and outside, this one was all in the main NEC event. Yeah. So it looked smaller than it was, but there was a lot in there. But it was easy to get around, so you could actually go up, and Braces of Bristol had amazing stands, with all their beautiful guns on there, and then you could go along to BSA on the way back, and have the Air Arms was opposite, so thank you for the coffee. They were very good to us, and generally speaking, we were able to see, but we're not really spending too much time on it. So I got a flavour for it.
So what I mean, from a customer's point of view, from people wandering the show, what really sort of like stuck in your mind? What was impressive? I mean, not just about air guns, obviously. All the associated products as well. Was there anything that really you came away and went, wow?
Well, what was there was, for once, obviously I go to IWA, a show in Nuremberg, and the SHOT Show. And you see these mainstream impressive stands like the Schmidt and Bender stand and the Zeiss stand, and these are world-class companies with world-class exhibition equipment. The Zeiss stand in Nuremberg is probably a £2 million ground rent. I don't know what it is, but it's just unbelievable. They've got, it's like a supermarket, and you've got everything laid out. Yeah. And Leica had a stand last year where I was up on the veranda looking down, watching how they flowed people through their stand. And you went to the reception and you got given a ticket and you went back at a certain time. And when you sat down in your booth at your allotted time, a waiter brought you food. And while you were placing your order, sir, you got fed and watered and beered, and the salesman's there, and you're in his debt, and you're at this table and you have your food, and you place your order, and you're within your allotted time zone, they clear the food away, and you're out, and then the next appointment comes in. Mm-hmm. And I thought, wow, that is just so organised, you know. And then you've got the British side of it, where you've got a guy sitting on a borrowed stool with a set of sandwiches he's brought from home, you know, and it's not the same. And the British shooting show was always a little bit like that, but you did have these major exhibitors in there somewhere, but they were much more prominent this time. You know, in amongst the ham and eggers, as it were, there was an awful lot of professional big companies there showing their wares in their stand. But the next one was a trestle table with a blanket over it. You know, so it was kind of mixed in a little bit. You got back to the Britishness every now and then, but there was the world-class stuff.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, well,
it's honest.
That's what I was doing.
It's honest, and it's honest and straight.
Well, you can see where the money's going, can't you? Yes. You know, that's the other thing. Is you know, if you've just spent I don't know, £3,000 on a Zeiss scope, and you've just seen a £2 million stand, you know that not all of the money you spent on that scope went into the optics. It's a lot of it's gone away in profits and reinvestment, and they will argue for that, you know. But it's I don't know. You kind of like to keep your money to yourself and to get value for money, and that when you've got these companies doing that, it shows you where the money's going. But it was a good show. It was well laid out. It was 3 days. It was 9 till 4, which is very unusual because normally they try and start early and finish you late. So we were in and out. But we're here to talk about air guns. So
yes.
Let's talk about what.
Right. Come on then. So so what did you see, and what what was exciting and new and. In fact, actually, well, last time we did that sort of A to Z thing, didn't we?
Well,
let's not do that.
We can't do the alphabet because we missed out on half the letters.
We did, we're not very good with alphabet. So, for example, I mean, the what we would class as the big players, FX and BSA and all that sort of stuff. You know, what did you? I have seen some interesting photographs. I haven't handled that. For example, BSA just brought a new semi-bullpup, would you call it?
Well, it's a proper bullpup.
The Defiance.
Defiant, and it looks, I mean, if you didn't know your way around, it could look a little bit like some of the Czech bullpups which are out there, and it's got a certain amount of wildcat look about it.
I did see a comment on one of the Facebook groups, and they sort of said it was the child between a wildcat and actually I sort of think there's a little bit of Compato in there as well.
The front end, because of the forend of the stock, the Compato actually looked a little bit like an SE, doesn't it? You know, the front end of it.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's on purpose. I think it's just the way the design went. And because they're trying to follow their family line, or maybe the stock maker's the same, which I think is Sykes, isn't it? A BSA? Yeah. So he's probably done that stock, and the back end looks very different to anything that's been out there before, with a bracing piece and a very thin profile. But the front end does look Compato oblique. You know, BSA.
Do you think they've left it too long to do something like that, or you see, there's two arguments in there.
I think they got dragged to the party kicking and screaming.
So they didn't want. You think they maybe didn't want to do it?
Who can say? But you know, Defiant gives away something, doesn't it? You know,
There is always that thing. Yeah. I always remember when the HW100 came out, and Virat were talking to. In fact, actually. I do remember that time because it's so unusual that companies actually talk to the retailers, and talking to the retailers in different countries was even more. So when Virat actually rang me and said they were wanting to talk about the 100, etc. And I was sort of saying to them, well, don't you think you needed to get cracking earlier and all that? And they said, well, would you rather have a product that came out last and was the best? And I sort of thought, do you know what? Yeah.
So you think that's the case of the BSA?
Well, whether it's the best or not, I don't know. But it's certainly maybe they've looked at everybody else and sort of said, well, I don't want to do that, and I definitely don't want to do that.
With BSA Gammo, part of this Remington group, part of that thing. They are such a commercial company now. You know, these decisions are not led by the heart at BSA. They're led by the commercial head of sales or somebody has decided they needed a bullpup. It wouldn't be doing it on a whim, and they wouldn't be doing it on a whim this late into the process. So bullpups are probably flattening out now. So somebody in commercial has said we need a bullpup, and they have produced a bullpup. Right. It's actually not bad, and I think that the Cocking Lincoln, which is very similar to an FX, looks absolutely right. That's definitely the place to put it. It's supposed to be. I didn't actually get it off the wall, but it's supposed to be rear sprung so that you cock it back and it.
That's right. It says spring assisted.
Spring assisted,
yeah.
which is quite nice. It's definitely in the right place. The height of the barrel scope looks just as bad as every other bullpup. People have handled it so it's very top heavy, which nothing new, no news there. It's regulated. But it's nearly 1,100 quid, and that is a market move for BSA. It's it's about 200, 300 pounds more than R10.
That's almost directly competing with the Wildcat. In fact, the Wildcat Mark II, which I don't know whether you did you see the Mark II?
I've seen it because it's got the new barrel technology in it.
Yeah. And also as well, I tell you what, it's the same thing over and over again with FX, in my opinion, is that they bring something out and then they refine it. And I mean, you could be critical of them and saying, well, you should have done this, you should have done that, but you know what they do? Yeah. They get it right. And the Wildcat, in fact, we just got some in the shop last week, and I think they are lovely, and the little tweaks that they've made, the cocking mechanism and obviously the barrel, just the only thing they've done wrong, in my opinion, is they've shortened the silencer sleeve a little bit too much, and it makes that sort of noise now. But saying that, Hug It
again.
But Hug It have just brought a little mini me silencer, haven't they?
Half a belitre.
I don't know what they're calling it. I was going to say the bell, but anyway, so we shoved one of those on because they came in at the same time, and that was absolutely spot on. So you sort of think, well, BSA, like they're going head on against the Wildcat Mark II, which is going to be it's going to be a challenge.
BSA is more popular in this market. If I was at BSA, which of course I'm not, but if I was at BSA, I would probably say, you're pushing the line extension now into an area where you might get. You might get a bloody nose, but it's their choice. Who's to say it's not going to be?
There's a lot of BSA fanatics about though, and that will buy BSA.
And a lot of BSA shops. I mean, the other thing is that you go around shops. The thing you notice is that you go into one shop and you say, "Yeah, we wouldn't have a BSA in here. We bought 5 and they all broke." You go 200 yards down the road and
it's the opposite.
There's nothing but BSAs in there. We've never had one back, And even calibers are quite funny. You can go to one end of a high street where they're all selling 2.2s, and you go to the other end, they're all selling 1.77.
Yeah.
It's just what the customers are asking for, and the little. I mean, you get to stuff.
It's also as well the way the retailer gets treated by the companies as well. You do feel like an affinity.
One argument will do it.
Yeah.
One. Paying postage for this gun or one warranty return that they're not prepared to cover, that can end 6-7 years of perfect harmony, and that happens in business everywhere, doesn't it? But you get people who are going to stick by their guns, and you can end up with a row. Yeah.
So
we were talking about Theoben then, weren't you? Yeah.
I'm staying all the way from that subject. So we've done BSA. I'm interested to see it. It sounds like it's going to be available soon as well. So obviously, as soon as we get the Defiant in, we'll do a review.
Yeah. So other new stuff. There was a new Hudson. There was 2 new Webleys, which I got to have a quick look at, but couldn't really get close to it. There was Daystate had the Red Wolf, and that was
the Regal. The
Regal, which is the Huntsman Regal Humour regulator, so the HR, which they've used an XL version of the Regal, so the long tube, and they put in they put a Humour regulator inside that, which gives them something new for the show.
I'm guessing, obviously. Regulators at one time, Daystate didn't do regulators. They didn't need it. Did they really need a regulator?
No, they don't. It's fashion. You can argue a bit more in the States, because if you're selling guns in the States and it hasn't got a regulator, it's about like selling a car without a fuel gauge. They just don't want to know.
Right.
So there's a definite. But then the American airgun market, not to say they're not informed, but they have definitely got fashion that they want to follow
and their own opinions.
The UK market, you don't need a regulator in a UK gun. You've already got enough air to give you a decent shot count. And if you've got a regulator in there, you've got a really big reason for that gun to break, because you've got the regulators in there. So you've got this. If we're talking about reliability of air guns, which we were off camera beforehand, it's a big issue. You've got low development budgets. You haven't got huge trials times. Mostly the guns go from drawing to prototype to production in just like that. There's nobody driving those around Sicily for 5 years, under cover like they do on the car system.
I was trying to explain to a customer yesterday about that, because he was worried about reliability of a particular brand that's not got the best record at the moment, and he couldn't understand. He couldn't understand it. He says, "Well, why don't they test it? Why don't they do this and do that?"
Because the industry's that big.
And also as well, money's tight, and when you've made designed a product, the bean counters want that on the shelves as quickly as possible.
Absolutely,
don't they? So
right, they do. And even if you don't, even if the engineers want to trial it for 6 months and develop it, there's no time and there's no money. So it goes usually from drawing to, if you're lucky, you get a run-up batch. That's the technical term for making 50 and trialing them and throwing them away. Mostly, no. It goes from drawing to prototype to production in a minute. And then if they break, they come back. So you've got to get it right. And of course, with regulators, there's a little bit more to go wrong. So, but it's what people want. They're putting them in everything. It's if you've got a warranty problem, then you're going to get a bigger one than the regulator can.
Oh, it's funny because I sort of look at regulators. Maybe it's a bad analogy, but I sort of look at regulators a bit like fuel injection on cars. Yeah. When it came out, everybody sort of said, "Oh, we don't really need it." But now, look at it 10 years later, the technology's matured. It's absolutely fabulous, and people look at carbs now and go, "Oh my God!" I don't want to know anything about a carburetor. Yeah. Fuel injection has just basically sorted so much out. So maybe,
My Laverda, which had fuel injection, was sort of Minelli fuel injection, and it used to conk out, and they were lumpy, and they didn't have proper flow. And now everything's fuel injected. But they put £1 zillion into development of the fuel injection system, and it's moved on, and the technology's moved on. And time. With a regulator, you take apart a regulator made today and a regulator made 10 years ago, you could swap them around, you'll never tell a difference. There's been no development in regulators.
Oh, really?
People will tell you there is, but really they're pretty much the same. What the trick with regulators is tight tolerances and repeatability. So you make them in a clean room and you get them right, and then you put them in. You don't pan polish or anything like that.
Okay.
But they've done the regulator. We'll see how it goes.
Well, I'm looking forward to it because I've always rated the Regal as probably one of the best air states ever made.
Yes,
to be honest with you, I think I had a Huntsman in 2.0 and it was phenomenal. Yes. I love that raffle, and it's just such a beautiful, I rue the day that
the open barrel on that one.
Sorry,
the open barrel on that one.
It was an Anschluss barrel, and it was bloody accurate as well. But I rue the day that actually Dare State decide that they don't want the Regal in the range anymore, which would be a shame. So
it doesn't look like that's going to happen.
No, exactly. No. Now we've got the regular. I guess it was like sort of shit or get off the pot, and they've sort of said, right, do you know what? Let's do it. Let's, and I
that's
think
a bold move, isn't it? But of course, it gave them something to watch. But they had the Red Wolf on the stand, which was quite nice to see.
Should we talk about that in a minute?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Yeah. Well, we're going to have a cup of tea, aren't we? Actually, we'll be back in a minute. We're going to talk about the Red Wolf and a few other bits and bobs, and then we've got some other interesting guns to show you. So back soon. Right there, that went all right, didn't it? Shall we have a brew?
Yes, why not?
Why not?